Now, the topic that I wanted to get to now is Mike Johnson. This morning on CNBC, Johnson said this about the filthy Nazi pig who is planning on being either the president come 2024 after the election or is going to rip the country to pieces if he is not made president. The orange bastard. Well, Mike Johnson endorsed Donald Trump for president this morning. Huh? He said on CNBC, quote, "I have endorsed him wholeheartedly. I'm all in for President Trump," end quote. Now you know, there is no equivocation here that Mike Johnson is as much of a fucking Christian Nazi as anyone could be in this country. And he will do what Trump tells him to do. Now, if you remember, Trump celebrated Johnson's being voted in as Speaker of the House. Trump called him Maga Mike Johnson. No shit. The Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives supports a Nazi, is a Nazi. Mike Johnson does not believe that Joe Biden won the presidency fair and square in 2020. Mike Johnson doesn't believe that. Now, the comments from this baby-faced Christian Nazi bastard came just a few hours after the New York Times reported on an August 2015 Facebook post that Mr. Johnson, the Trump fellator, another one, a comment Johnson made before he was elected to Congress. In that comment, he criticized Trump, who at the time was the Republican Party's nominee. Johnson said, quote, "He lacks the character and the moral center we desperately need again in the White House," end quote, as if Obama didn't have integrity and a moral center. But this is what this Nazi little fuck Mike Johnson said, and the tape is there for anyone who wants to see it. And in response to someone commenting on that post, the New York Times reported that Johnson said, quote, "I'm afraid he would break more things than he fixes." This is in 2015. "He is hot-headed by nature, and that is a dangerous trait to have in a commander-in-chief," end quote. That's what this little baby-faced Christian bastard said in 2015. But then, realizing, as so many of these phony Christians, these Christian Nazis, realizing what so many of them have come to realize, that Trump is the key to the destruction of the world, and in that moment, their fucked up version of their fucked up Messiah will make his glorious return to earth and raise up all the corpses and rotting bodies out of cemeteries to fly up to heaven. Ooh. Man. Anyway, Mike Johnson then became a steadfast supporter of this Christian Nazi, Donald Trump. And I use the term Christian Nazi when I'm applying it to Trump advisedly, because Trump is not a Christian, not a Jew, not a Muslim. Trump is dirt, filth, scum, worm shit. He is nothing, but he is a Nazi. But Johnson became just a sycophant of Trump's, a real supporter, notably during Trump's first impeachment trial in 2019 and then through the 2020 election. And Mike Johnson, and we never heard this because he was a backbencher. Who the fuck cared about Mike Johnson? But he was echoing Trump's conspiracy theories about his loss to Biden. And he filed a brief in a lawsuit, Mike Johnson did, that tried to overturn Joe Biden's presidential election win. And then this morning, Johnson reiterated all of this, saying in this interview with CNBC that he was, quote, "one of the closest allies President Trump had in Congress. And now he's the Speaker of the House. Now, the Associated Press wants to make a statement here. Here it is, quote, I mean the writer for the Associated Press, but this is a statement. Johnson's endorsement only firms up what is increasingly politically clear, that Trump is the Republican Party's frontrunner heading toward 2024, and few GOP leaders are willing to or able to stand in his way. There you go. You know, which, among other serious questions, raises a very comical question, which is, what the fuck are these? Well, there's 4 of them left now. There were 5 of them until Senator Tim Johnson, the senator from South Carolina, pulled out yesterday. These 4 people that are left trying to convince the American public that they should be president, whether it's DeSantis or Christie or Ramadama Swamy or the former governor of South Carolina. What the hell is her name? But why are these people still even pretending with these phony ass debates? Nikki Haley, thank you. So the Speaker of the U.S. House, now backing this Nazi Donald Trump, points the way for other House Christian fascists. This is the way to go. Follow me. I'm your leader. And it leaves the Christian fascist lawmakers who want a different candidate increasingly isolated in their party, and they have nowhere to go. Oh, they could vote. They could side with the Democrats, but these cowardly fuckers would never do that. If there's one thing a Christian is, it's a coward. If there's one thing a Christian fascist is, it's a coward who will push you into the line of fire while they go hide behind a rock somewhere. Now, there are a handful of so-called centrist conservatives in the so-called Republican Party in the House. Centrist conservatives. Isn't that funny? A centrist conservative. What a joke. This little group, and it's not that big, they still think they're part of the Republican Party. They don't know that they have covered themselves with the rotting flesh of a dead party. Boys and girls, there's no such thing. I would address this to those members of the House. There's no such thing as a Republican Party anymore. Don't you understand that? Are you just holding out to the last minute, thinking that there will be, pardon the expression, a miracle to return the Republican Party to what it was? Well, you have to go back about 50 years to find a Republican Party that was viable and made any kind of near sense. I would advise these so-called centrist conservatives, give it up. Your leader has been decided. The threat to this country is eminently clear. If you are going to continue to call yourself a Republican, that means you are supporting this beast. You are supporting the Antichrist, just like the leader of the House is now doing. I have to stop that too, talking about that, because, you know, to me, it is so clear that this combination of the most insane part of the Christian religion mixed all up with Nazism and flavored with fascism, and that has become the central reason for being of what used to be the Republican Party. Man. Okay, what now? Oh, yeah. I wanted to... See, I can't let this go because to me, the essential threat to this country right now, and has been since 2015, is this beast, the Antichrist Donald Trump. So I was checking Greg Sargent's column in the Washington Post this morning and immediately got caught by Greg Sargent's headline, which says, Trump's plan for giant detention camps points to a brutal 2024 reality. Giant detention camps. This is another thing he said in New Hampshire on Saturday. And Trump's filthy Nazi advisors like Steve Bannon, like Stephen Miller, like the rest of this filth, they've made it very clear that if the orange bastard gets the presidency again, he's going to launch an extraordinary crackdown on immigration. See, that's how it starts. Well, first you go after the liberals. But I wasn't a liberal, so I didn't say anything. Then you go after the socialists. But I wasn't a socialist, so I didn't say anything. Then you go after the writers and the poets, but I wasn't a writer or a poet, so I didn't say anything. Then you go after the Jews, but I'm not a Jew, so I didn't say anything. You remember that saying by Father, what was his name? Until finally, when they came for me, it was too late. There was no one to say anything for me. This is where we are. Please understand that. Please. Now, given that this orange bastard lost re-election in 2020, after he tried to put out there a much less violent agenda, then advertising what he's going to do when he's reelected, as Greg Sargent points out, seems like foolish political malpractice. But here's something that's been pointed out over and over again. Trump always lets you know what he's going to do. There is no subtlety about Trump. There is no opaqueness about Trump. Trump is exactly what he appears to be. And I think this is a big mistake that media in this country have made. They listen to this raving son of a bitch and think, well, that's so far off the charts, it couldn't possibly be true. Not realizing or trying to convince themselves that it's not true, when in fact, what Trump says is what Trump does. He is a one-dimensional monster. There is no subtlety about this guy. But anyway, back to what Greg wrote. The politics of immigration can be peculiar, he writes. And the public tends to turn on the president in power when the situation at the border goes wrong. And this is another thing that drives me crazy. The president of the United States in a democracy cannot dictate this shit. It's up to the Congress, which is what Trump is going to neutralize, thanks to Mike Johnson, if he becomes president again. All of the orders will come from Trump's twisted little tiny mouth. But because so many Americans are so fucking ignorant about the way things work politically, they immediately seek a diametrically different approach from what they think is the president's approach, no matter who the president is. And no matter what kind of policies the incumbent president has put in place, no matter what the challenger to the president is saying he's going to do, the public, in its vast ignorance, the American public, so many of us so fucking ignorant, will go ahead and vote based on what the challenger says he is going to do, when in fact he can do nothing. The President of the United States does not write the law. The President of the United States has the power to sign off on a law that Congress has imposed, or mark it as no, I'm going to reject that. But then the Congress has the power to override that rejection. So the president doesn't make the law. You know this. I know this. Tens of millions of us know this. But there are tens of millions of Americans who don't have a fucking clue about just the simple thing I just shared with you. They don't have a clue. Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. You know, the Progressive Voices Network brings you commercial-free commentary from today's leading progressive radio hosts and pundits, like me, Mike Malloy, 24 hours a day. I'm not your typical old guy from the 80s or the 90s talk radio host, and Progressive Voices is not your typical talk radio network. It's a listener-supported nonprofit with no corporate control whatsoever over our broadcast. So hosts like me, Mike Malloy, are free to rant and scream and carry on about whatever we like. We're often controversial, but we're never boring. Weeknights, 9 p.m. in the East, 6 p.m. in the West on the Progressive Voices Network. Always progressive, always on. I'm Mike Malloy. Keep it lit.